Louisiana, where the food is a religion, the music never stops, and the culture that the whole world borrows from was built right here on this soil. But here's what nobody puts in the travel brochure. This state has produced some of the most powerful, most wealthy, and most flat-out extraordinary black women on the planet, including one billionaire who basically owns Louisiana. Let's count them down. Number 8. Angel Reese, the Bayou Barbie, who monetized her own name before she even graduated. Let's start with someone who looked at the traditional rules of college athletics. You know, the ones that said students couldn't profit off their own name and likeness. And basically said, new rules, new era, watch this. Angel Reese arrived at LSU as a highly recruited basketball prospect, and by the time she left Baton Rouge, she had built something that most professional athletes take a decade to construct. During a single academic year at LSU, she signed 17 major endorsement deals and generated approximately $1.7 million in NIL earnings, while technically still being a student. Reebok, PlayStation, Amazon, Calvin Klein, McDonald's. That's not a college athlete's sponsorship portfolio. That's a mid-career professional athlete's sponsorship portfolio, assembled by a 21-year-old in Baton Rouge. Her estimated net worth sits somewhere between $1.7 million and $7 million as of 2025. And the range itself is interesting, because Reese has publicly pushed back on the lower figures, telling interviewers that the $2 million number is way off, and implying the real figure is considerably higher. Which honestly tracks. When you're a minority owner of DC Power FC, a professional soccer franchise, while simultaneously running a podcast called Unapologetically Angel that's racking up serious download numbers, the asset picture gets complicated fast. The Bayou Barbie nickname didn't come from a marketing team. It came from the culture, from the way she showed up at LSU with this unbothered, unapologetic confidence that resonated immediately with New South urban culture. She led the Lady Tigers to a national championship, turned a high-profile college rivalry into one of the most watched moments in women's basketball history, and used every single bit of that attention as fuel for her brand. What's genuinely fascinating about Reese in the context of this list is that she's the youngest entry by decades, and yet she understood something that took previous generations of athletes much longer to grasp: that the name, the image, the personality are themselves the asset. Louisiana gave her the platform. She built the brand. And if she's doing all this at 21, the trajectory over the next decade is one of the more interesting financial stories to watch in women's sports. Now, let's move to someone who didn't need a scholarship or a sports platform. She built her empire one lipstick and one live stream at a time. Number 7. Raynell Supa Stewart. The woman who made $1.37 million in 60 minutes from her phone. Here's a number worth sitting with for a second. $1,370,000 in 60 minutes. Not from a hedge fund. Not from a real estate closing. From selling makeup online via a Cyber Monday promotion, run by a woman who dropped out of high school at 16 and used to work at an aquarium in New Orleans. Raynell Stewart, known everywhere as Supa, is the CEO of the Crayon Case, a beauty brand that Forbes currently values at $50 million. The company is entirely self-funded. She didn't raise venture capital or take on investors. She started selling products through a personal retail site called wasmwithsupa.com, reinvested every dollar of profit, and slowly built the infrastructure to support the kind of volume that eventually broke the internet on Cyber Monday, 2019. The way she built her audience is almost more impressive than the sales numbers themselves. Before the Crayon Case existed as a proper brand, Stewart was live streaming makeup tutorials on Periscope, showing her skills, being brutally funny, talking in her authentic New Orleans voice, and making people feel like they were hanging out with a friend rather than watching a brand pitch. And that distinction is everything. In an industry full of glossy, overly produced beauty content, she was raw, real, and refreshingly unbothered. Her connection to New Orleans runs deep and genuine. The city's culture, that specific blend of irreverence, warmth, and straight-talking community energy, is essentially baked into the Supa brand. When she did a toy giveaway in New Orleans in 2018, She teamed up with fellow Louisiana entrepreneur Jesseca Dupart and broke a Guinness World Record by collecting over 5,000 toys in a single hour. That's not a PR stunt. That's a woman who understood her community and delivered for them at scale. Her products have landed on Oprah's favorite things list. Her social media presence is part comedy show, part business masterclass. And through all of it, she's maintained 100% ownership of her company, which at a $50 million valuation is a rarer flex than it sounds. But here's where this countdown gets even more interesting. Because the next woman on this list has a story that starts with her salon literally burning to the ground and somehow ends with a $12 million brand and a Grammy-nominated husband. Louisiana, man. Number 6. Jesseca Judy Harris. Dupart. Built it twice, burned it once, never stopped. There's a version of Jesseca Harris Dupart's story where the fire ends it, where a woman who poured her life savings into opening a hair salon in New Orleans watches it burn down months after opening, and quietly goes back to working as a cosmetologist and calls it a lesson learned. That version doesn't exist, because Dupart is not built that way. She used the insurance money and whatever savings she had left to reopen in 2014, and in the pivot from salon services to manufacturing her own hair products, she accidentally stumbled into something far bigger than any single location could ever be. Kaleidoscope hair products, specifically the Miracle Drops growth formula, became a retail phenomenon, hitting its first $1 million in sales in 2017 and generating approximately $12 million in annual revenue by 2022. Her products now sit on shelves at Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens, and Sally Beauty. Born in New Orleans, rebuilt in New Orleans, distributed nationally. Her net worth is estimated between $5 million and $10 million, and her commercial real estate footprint in the city is growing. She developed the Miracle Plaza in New Orleans, a project that signals her thinking beyond product sales and into building long-term physical assets in the community where she grew up. When the city gave her the key to New Orleans in 2019 for her philanthropic work through her Kaleidoscope nonprofit, it felt like a genuine acknowledgement rather than a ceremonial gesture. Then, 2022 happened, and her profile went stratospheric. Her marriage to Grammy-nominated rapper Da Brat became one of the most celebrated moments in both the entertainment and black business communities, and their WeTV reality series Brat Loves Judy introduced her story to an audience of millions who hadn't tracked her come up through the beauty industry. She wrote a memoir. She kept expanding the brand. She never really slowed down. The detail that sticks with me, though, is the salon fire. Because rebuilding after that kind of loss, financially and emotionally, requires a specific kind of hard-headedness that you can't teach. Louisiana has a particular relationship with resilience, post-Katrina, post-storm, post-disaster. Dupart carries that energy in everything she's built. Now, we've had a young athlete, a beauty mogul, and a hair care entrepreneur. But our next entry is the one that flips the entire script, because she turned New Orleans into her creative headquarters and built a cultural empire that operates on a completely different frequency from everything we've covered so far. Number 5. Solange Knowles, the cultural architect running her empire from the French Quarter. Let's be honest about something. For a long time, the conversation around Solange Knowles started and ended with the words, Beyoncé's younger sister. And if that framing frustrated her, she had the most elegant possible response. She moved to New Orleans, bought a historic building, and built a creative operation so respected that the art world now comes to her. Solange's net worth is estimated at $9 million, built across a music catalog that includes Grammy-winning work, high-value fashion partnerships with Gucci and Saint Laurent, and her creative studio Saint Heron, which functions as an umbrella organization for her performance art, cultural events, and design projects, all headquartered in New Orleans. In 2018, she purchased a 7,500 square foot historic stone building in the city for $850,000 to house St. Heron's operations, a move that signaled she wasn't just visiting Louisiana for aesthetic inspiration. She was planting a flag. Her albums, A Seat at the Table and When I Get Home, are not just critically acclaimed records. They're cultural artifacts that drew heavily from Black Southern experience, from the specific textures of Louisiana, from the weight of history that sits differently in New Orleans than it does anywhere else. She made work that could only have come from someone who chose to live inside that history rather than observe it from a distance. Now, the building has had its complications. Noise complaints from neighbors, a demolition by neglect citation in 2022, and eventually a listing for sale in 2023. But here's the thing. Even the administrative drama around that property generated more cultural conversation about New Orleans and Black arts investment than most deliberate PR campaigns could buy. Her presence alone acts as a draw for the kind of creative migration that shifts a city's cultural identity. What separates Solange on this list is the nature of her wealth. It's built on cultural credibility that eventually becomes its own economy. The museum performances, the luxury brand deals, the critical reputation that opens doors most artists never find. In a city that has always known how to turn culture into currency, Solange understood the assignment completely. But if Solange represents the modern Louisiana creative, our next two entries reach back into history. And what they built, under the conditions they faced, is arguably more extraordinary than anything we've covered so far. Number 4. Mary Ellen Pleasant, the $1 billion shadow. The year is 1890. The United States Census is collecting occupational data, and in San Francisco, a Black woman has listed her official occupation as capitalist, not housekeeper, not laundress, not domestic servant, though she had played all of those roles strategically. Capitalist, because by that point, Mary Ellen Pleasant was worth approximately $30 million, which in today's purchasing power lands somewhere close to $1 billion. And she had gotten there through one of the most calculated, quietly audacious business careers in American history. Pleasant's connection to Louisiana runs through her own account of her origins. She maintained that her mother was a free woman of color from Louisiana, and her business instincts reflected the kind of under-the-radar wealth-building strategies that characterized free Black communities in the antebellum South. She is widely considered the first self-made Black female millionaire in America, predating even Madam C.J. Walker by decades. Her portfolio at peak wealth included stakes in what would become Wells Fargo Bank, significant real estate holdings, boarding houses and restaurants that generated consistent cash flow, and speculative positions in gold and silver mines during the California gold rush. She built most of this while presenting herself publicly as a domestic servant, overhearing the investment conversations of wealthy white households in San Francisco and acting on the information with the precision of someone running a one-woman hedge fund. She hid in plain sight for decades. It was not accidental. But here's the fact that genuinely makes your jaw drop. Pleasant was a financial backer of John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry in 1859. She reportedly funneled thousands of dollars into one of the most famous abolitionist operations in American history, at a time when being discovered as a co-conspirator could have meant execution. The woman simultaneously ran a multi-million-dollar investment operation and helped fund the armed abolitionist movement while portraying herself as a housekeeper. The audacity of that double life is almost impossible to fully absorb. Her alleged connection to Marie Laveau, New Orleans' legendary voodoo queen, adds another layer to the Louisiana thread. Whether or not the relationship was real, the parallel is striking. Two Black women in 19th century America, both operating vast networks of influence through strategic invisibility, both accumulating power in systems explicitly designed to deny it to them. Number 3. Madam C.J. Walker. Born in a cotton field, died as the richest Black woman in America. If Mary Ellen Pleasant operated in shadows, Madam C.J. Walker stepped into the light and built her empire in full view. And the Guinness Book of World Records eventually recognized what she achieved as a first that has never been replicated in quite the same way. The first female self-made millionaire in America. She was born Sarah Breedlove in 1867 in Delta, Louisiana, a village in Madison Parish where her parents had been enslaved as sharecroppers. She was the first person in her family born into freedom, but freedom at that moment in Louisiana was an extremely thin protection. She worked cotton fields as a child. She spent years as a laundress, doing other people's washing for $1 here and $2 there. The distance between that life and the 40,000 agent national sales network she eventually commanded is one of the most extraordinary trajectories in the history of American business. The turning point came in 1904 when she encountered a hair growth product developed by entrepreneur Annie Malone and recognized both the need it was meeting and the commercial infrastructure that didn't yet exist to serve Black women at scale. She launched Madam Walker's wonderful hair grower, and then she did something that most entrepreneurs of her era, any era, failed to do. She built a system. Not just a product, but a recruitment engine, a training program. a network of agents operating across the entire country, turning other Black women into independent earners in the process. At the time of her death in 1919, her fortune was estimated between $500,000 and $1 million, equivalent to somewhere between $15 million and $30 million today. Her Hudson River mansion, Villa Lewaro, built at a cost of $250,000, was later designated a National Historic Landmark. She donated $5,000 to the NAACP's anti-lynching campaign, the single largest donation the organization had received at the time. The 2020 Netflix series Self-Made dramatized her life, though it drew criticism for taking liberties with the historical record, particularly around her complicated relationship with Annie Malone, whose foundational work Walker built upon. But the fictional inaccuracies, frustrating as they are, couldn't diminish the core of the story. A woman from a Louisiana cotton field became the benchmark for what Black female wealth building could look like. Louisiana put its name on her birthplace with a memorial on Highway 80 in Delta, and that marker sits there as a quiet, permanent reminder of exactly where it all started. Number 2. Sevetri Wilson, the LSU graduate who made history on Wall Street without ever leaving New Orleans. At some point during the tech boom of the 2000s, a quiet assumption calcified in the investment world. If you're building a serious software company and you want serious venture capital, you leave the South and go to San Francisco or New York. Sevetri Wilson looked at that assumption, stayed in New Orleans anyway, and then broke every record that assumption was built on. Wilson grew up in Hammond, Louisiana, a small city about 45 minutes outside New Orleans, and attended LSU on a full scholarship through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation after losing both parents at a young age. She graduated with a background in mass communication and history, built a seven-figure strategic communications firm called Solid Ground Innovations by the time she was 22, with zero startup capital, and then pivoted entirely into software when she identified a genuine gap in how nonprofits and grant-making organizations were managing their operations. That pivot became Resilia, a SaaS platform that helps nonprofits and grantors actually operationalize their missions rather than drowning in administrative overhead. And in October 2022, Resilia closed a $35 million Series B funding round, the largest venture capital raise ever recorded for a solo Black female-founded tech company in the United States, and the largest VC raise ever for any female founder in the state of Louisiana. Goldman Sachs and SoftBank are among the institutional names backing the company. Total capital raised now exceeds $50 million. She calls herself a good old Southern girl from Hammond, and that framing is intentional. Wilson has been outspoken about her decision to build in New Orleans rather than relocate, recognizing that proving it could be done from here was itself part of the mission. Her second book, Resilient: How to Survive Anything and Build a $1 Million Business, with or without capital, became a Wall Street Journal bestseller. She's received the Jefferson Award. Her work has been cited in U.S. Senate reports to the White House. She's a recipient of what her profile describes as the National Nobel Prize for Public Service. There's a version of Sevetri Wilson's story that gets told as a triumph over adversity arc, the orphaned girl who made it. And while that's technically accurate, it undersells what she actually did. She didn't just survive the adversity. She went back to Louisiana, identified a real problem, built a real solution, raised record-breaking capital without leaving the South, and in doing so expanded what was considered possible for every founder who comes after her. Which brings us inevitably to number 1. The woman whose name you already know, whose Creole Louisiana roots run deeper into this story than most people realize, and whose empire is operating at a scale that makes everything else on this list look like the opening act. Number 1. Beyoncé Knowles-Carter. The billion-dollar Creole blueprint. Everything on this list, every hustle, every record broken, every empire built, has been building toward this. And yet the most interesting thing about Beyoncé's connection to Louisiana isn't the size of her fortune. It's the architecture of how she uses it, and how deliberately she has woven her Louisiana heritage into the foundation of almost everything she's built. Her net worth sits between $780 million and $1 billion as of current estimates, making her the wealthiest Black female entertainer alive and the unambiguous apex of this entire list. Her management company, Parkwood Entertainment, operates through a series of subsidiaries and holding structures that give her an unusually high degree of ownership and creative control across music, fashion, film, and real estate. Ivy Park. Netflix distribution deals worth $60 million. A catalog of music that is both culturally dominant and one of the most financially valuable artist portfolios in the modern era. But the Louisiana thread runs through all of it in ways that are easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Her mother, Tina Knowles-Lawson, descends from a lineage of French-speaking Creoles of color from Louisiana, and that heritage has been a deliberate, conscious touchstone throughout Beyoncé's career. The imagery of Lemonade. The integration of Louisiana bounce music culture into her global productions. The way post-Katrina New Orleans becomes not just a backdrop, but a moral argument in her visual work. She didn't just take inspiration from the state. She built a brand architecture around it, returning cultural capital to Louisiana on a scale that's genuinely hard to quantify. Her real estate foothold in New Orleans is anchored by a historic 13,200 square foot Garden District mansion on Harmony Street, originally built in 1925 as a Presbyterian church, with 7 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, acquired through Sugarcane Park LLC, a subsidiary of Parkwood Entertainment. The property was reportedly purchased for around $2.6 million in 2015 and appreciated significantly, later listed at approximately $4.45 million after an arson investigation in 2021 drew intense public attention. The fact that a suspicious fire at a Beyoncé property in New Orleans made international headlines is itself a testament to exactly how embedded she is in the city's cultural consciousness. What separates Beyoncé from every other entry on this list isn't just the number, though the number is extraordinary. It's the completeness of the model. She owns the music. She controls the fashion. She holds the real estate. She finances the productions. From a single New Orleans bloodline, she built a vertically integrated global empire that operates with the sophistication of a corporation and the authenticity of someone who genuinely knows where she came from. And there you go. 8 women. 8 completely different paths to wealth, influence, and legacy. Which one impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments. And for more such interesting peeks into how Black wealth is prospering across America, take a look at Black Status.